Hey everyone, today we're talking about the new zone of Gloomrot coming to us in the latest V Rising expansion. We'll be covering a multitude of information about the zones, including an overview, when to enter, bosses and mobs, points of interest and resources, and general tips for progressing. I do want to preface that this is based off the current beta test. However, the devs have been doing an amazing job of updating and fine-tuning various aspects of it, so keep in mind in case some of this might get a little outdated. That being said, Gloomrot is an amazing addition into the game, so let's hop right into it. We'll begin with an overview. The most important thing is that the new zone of Gloomrot is actually two new zones, Gloomrot South and Gloomrot North. So while they are both Gloomrot and a part of the expansion, they are essentially two different zones based off resources and levels. Gloomrot South is the lower leveled zone of the two. This is a sludge-filled, mutant-filled wasteland of excess pollution from the north. Here you'll find no shortage of horrifying monsters. There are a total of 15 castle spots you can build in here as well. Gloomrot North is a land of lightning and storms. As you navigate this in-game zone, you'll constantly be dodging both lightning strikes from the sky and from the various mechanical foes you'll have to face. There are a total of 9 castle spots you can build in here. So, let's hop into more specifics. I'll be breaking this video up into two different parts, one for Gloomrot South and one for Gloomrot North. Let's begin with the South. Gloomrot South. First things first, when do you enter Gloomrot South? The zone begins towards the back half of Act 2, between Dunley Farmlands and the Cursed Forest. In terms of bosses, it will be after you've beaten Raziel and Octavian typically. But it should be noted that Gloomrot South and Cursed Forest go hand in hand in terms of progression. You'll be going to both zones when you're around level 60-65. You typically would go to Gloomrot South first and then go into Cursed Forest after, but they can be kind of go paired together. Now, what bosses are in Gloomrot South? There are, in fact, 3 V-Blood bosses here, so let's talk about them. First, we have Ziva the Engineer, a level 60 boss. She gives you the following: Ball Lightning, which is a new storm spell, and then the recipes for the Fabricator, Canisters, and Radium Alloy. The Fabricator is a new refining station used to make late game items such as canisters to fill with sludge, power cores, and EMPs. You can also use this station to refine coins for market. She is located in the Transcendum Machine Factory. And then a general tip for kind of fighting Ziva is that she will pause in the fight to swap weapons. You'll see as like weapon will descend down. That is a good moment to kind of either blood mend or pop a potion as you fight her. I would also recommend either staying right on top of her or keeping a far distance, but don't really stay in medium range, as she does have a fire attack that sweeps around her and hurts a lot if you stand in it. Next up, we have Angram the Purifier, level 60 boss. When you defeat Angram, you will get the Chaos Barrier spell, which is now obviously on him and no longer on Quincy. Additionally, you'll get the recipes for mutated rats, major explosive boxes, and a radiant gruel, which I don't recommend to drink that. Angram is located in the Pools of Rebirth, and as a general tip for fighting him, I highly recommend clearing out all the mobs and mutants in the area. As you walk around the kind of acid pools, mutants will pop out. I definitely would choose a spot to fight him, as he does kind of do loops around, so you could pick a spot to fight him, clear all the mobs and mutants out, and then that way you can focus purely on him. Now, Angram does pack a punch that has huge AoEs of fire and pain, so make sure you find a nice spot to stay healthy and maybe bring a barrier or a blood fountain to stay healthy and hit him from afar. Lastly, of the Gloomrot South bosses, we have Domina the Blade Dancer. Domina unlocks Polarity Shift, which is a new storm spell, and honestly, maybe the most enjoyable spell in the game. It is a ton of fun to use and a lot of creative options with it. Additionally, you will get castle teleporters from her, which are little placement pads you put on the ground in your castle to teleport around inside, which helps with navigating around, especially if you have multiple floors to your castle. She is located in Rustlock Village, and as general tips, I definitely would use a barrier against her in this fight or bring Rogue Blood. She has a lot of quick but narrow attacks that you need to block or sidestep. Beyond that, when you see her charging up, make sure to back up to avoid a large spin AoE damage. I definitely recommend Chaos Dash as well for helping avoid her MMA combos. Beyond the 3 bosses of Gloomrot South, there are 4 main points of interest as well as 11 small camps. The 4 main points of interest are as followed. You have Transcendum Mine, where you can get copper ore and sulfur ore. Copper and sulfur are actually used a lot of mid-game and late-game crafting and refining, so having another spot to get these is super nice. Definitely have bear form when you go, since there's a lot of large nodes that you need bear form or explosives to get. You can also sneak up here early game if you're looking for another spot to get copper and sulfur. That's a bit safer most likely, though do be aware of the higher level mobs. Next to the points of interest, you have Rustlock Village. This is a really good general supply spot that provides scrolls, paper, copper, general loot, etc. It's almost like a mini Brighthaven docks. You can also get a lot of tech scrap here, which you'll need for later game crafting. The third of the 4 main points of interest is the Pools of Rebirth. This is a spot to go to grind mutant grease and get sludge-filled canisters as drops. Now, if you have normal canisters, you can fill them at any sludge pool. But this is a lot of mutant spawn here, and you can farm mutant grease. And lastly, you have Transcendum Machine Factory, where you'll get a taste of the tech you must face in Gloomrot as a whole. This is a good spot to get radium alloy early, as well as more scrolls to continue to progress through tier 2. Speaking of resources, there are some that you focus on in Gloomrot South, and this includes tech scraps and sludge canisters. Definitely make sure as you play you look to stock up on these resources in the zone. Beyond this is the good mixture of tier 1 and tier 2 loot, so you can go here earlier than recommended if you're trying to avoid the crowd and get goodies. And lastly, there are different mob types. You have your roaming humanoids, which are going to use a mixture of kind of normal, human abilities and fights that you see in the world, as well as some tech, where you have these large brutes who will use zaps to pull you in and stun you, as well as a new range unit, kind of similar to a sniper, who will have these narrow AoE blasts that they shoot out. Additionally, obviously, there are the mutants here, which you will get mutant blood from. It's a new blood type that has some fun effects, and it's something that you could take advantage of if you are looking to get that. Now moving on, let's talk about Gloomrot North. When you enter, this is a late game zone where you go in Act 3, typically after you progressed a bit in Silverlight and have Dark Silver weapons. If you follow boss progression, you'll kill around 4 bosses in Silverlight before you start progressing here. Now speaking of bosses, what are the bosses in Gloomrot North? There are a total of 3 V-Bloods here. First you have Henry Blackbrew the Doctor. For lore nerds, he's the founder of the Transcendum, which is the main faction of Gloomrot. When you defeat Henry, you unlock Discharge, which is a new storm counter spell that's really enjoyable that allows you to, after you get it off, you can knock enemies into the air. He also gives you the crafting recipes for the Athenium and Schematic recipes, which is the choke point to get the final crafts in this game, so he is an important one to go and get so you can start using schematics in the books for tier 3. He is located in the Transcendum Laboratories. A general tip for this boss is honestly, take this boss slow. He is super punishing if you just spam abilities at him, as he uses his counter frequently, and it can be devastating if you are hit, thrown up into the air, and then thrown into one of the mini lightning beams on the ground. I would also not recommend more than 2 people fighting him at once, as his arena is small. Next to the 3 V-Bloods is Voltatia the Power Master. Defeating her unlocks the ability Lightning Curtain, which is a new storm ability that is arguably maybe the strongest storm ability for PvP, as well as the crafting recipes for power cores and EMPs. The former is used an extreme amount in in-game crafting, and the latter is very important for a boss in this game. She is located in the Transcendum Power Plant, and as some general tips when you go to fight her, ride past all her guards and wrap around to the back of the zone. The mobs will de-aggro and you'll save yourself fighting too much before the boss, which, especially in PvP servers, can be very useful so you aren't just out in the open low on HP. When fighting her, don't bring any counters or shields. Her main attack can't be blocked and you have to just avoid it. So I recommend bringing maybe Blood Fountain if you need to sustain, and using abilities on her when you are in a safe spot. Additionally, when she splits into 2 enemies, it's still one shared HP pool. It's not one that one is low and you can kill it quickly and the other is the normal HP. It's one shared HP. So if you're able to get the 2 of them into the same spot, then you can really dish out major damage. Lastly, of the 3 V-Bloods in Gloomrot North, you have Adam the Firstborn. Now this is a boss I really don't want to spoil for people, as he's easily the hardest boss in the game and one of the coolest. He's my favorite fight yet. The main thing to know is he unlocks a lightning ultimate and is one of the holders of the 3 shards now. Beyond that, when you go to fight him, bring 2 EMPs at least so you can get into his prison, and I definitely recommend not fighting him solo. Moving past the bosses of Gloomrot North, we do have some points of interest to cover. There are 6 little camps in Gloomrot North and then 5 major points of interest. The first of which are the Transcendum Laboratories. This is a good spot to farm general resources, especially glass and tech scraps, but honestly I don't recommend spending too much time here, as the next point of interest is better for farming, and I really recommend it's just for going to kill the boss there. The next one, which I mentioned before, is the Transcendum Power Plant. You can get a lot of depleted batteries fighting all the mechs here. Beyond that, radium alloy drops here, which is helpful as an expensive craft, and you need a good bit of it. General loot also drops here, from paper to scrolls to schematics, so it's another good spot to farm under leveled if you wish. Next we have Thunderstrike Peak and Stormdream Hills. I'm putting these two together because they're basically the same point of interest, just that Thunderstrike Peak is a bit bigger. This is where you bring your depleted batteries to charge up so you can craft with them. Beyond that, not much of note at these locations, beyond them being very tough with an increased lightning strike rate and a lot of large mechs you have to fight. And then lastly, of the points of interest, you do have Dr. Blackbrew's Castle, which is where you will fight one of the bosses here in Gloomrot North. Speaking of kind of points of interest and resources, there are some you want to focus on in Gloomrot North, the biggest being batteries and charging them. You get batteries and you have to take them to Thunderstrike Peak or Stormdream Hills to charge them. Once they're charged, then they can use for crafting. Beyond the batteries though, you do get drops of radium alloy, and just general good loot for tier 3. And then lastly, with Gloomrot North, there are different mob types. You have your normal humanoid mobs here that you have to deal with, just like in Gloomrot South. There are some mutants here and there, but the big new mobs that you see a lot more are the mechs. Each mech has a type, such as Zapper or Gatler. Knowing what you are fighting will help. A general tip though for these mobs are to clear out their allies first and then focus on them. Keep a distance, as you constantly have to be moving or using barriers that deal with their explosions and abilities. So overall, this is a general guide for the new zone of Gloomrot. I hope you find this helpful. Hope this helps you get started as you explore the zone and check it out for yourself. And I hope you're excited about this expansion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. And check me out at twitch.tv/Redlaf, where I'm streaming V Rising all the time and would love for you to show up. Without further ado, thanks for watching. Peace out.